lots of motorsports can claim they have an interesting set of rules, or an interesting class of cars, or an interesting piece of technology that they use, but no motorsport is quite as free-flowing, as quite as unique as Formula Drift. Drifting is actually very different than other types of handbrake sliding. There was power slides, and there was ripping the e-brake, there was the Rockford turn, but drifting is a bit different. And drifting actually started in Japan, with a Japanese touring car driver named, I'm gonna butcher this like hell, Kimitsu Takashita, I think. He was quite good. In fact, not only did he compete at Le Mans and F1, he also competed at the Isles of Man. And, well, touring cars was a bit easy for him, apparently, so he started to spin the rear tires up as he was going around a corner, kicking the back end out so the crowd could get some enjoyment as he was winning all the races. And, well, the crowds loved it. And one person in that crowd was, again, I'm going to butcher this, Kinichi Teshigumiya, I think, aka the Drift King. The antics on track inspired him to begin practicing that sideways motion in Japanese mountain roads. And pretty soon he was making a video, like a viral video before YouTube. And after that video was released, drifting exploded in popularity. It was so popular immediately after the release of that video that he organized the D1 Grand Prix at Tsukuba Racetrack, which was the first known example of a drifting competition. By the beginning of the 21st century, drifting had not just come to Japan, but it was all around the world. And over here in America, a few guys named Jim Lyle and Ryan Sage, finally a name I can pronounce, decide they should have a drifting competition as well. They founded it with the name Formula Drift in 2003, with its inaugural season held the next year, and immediately there was some very interesting vehicles. You see, they founded a set of rules, and the rules are pretty damn loose, I'll be honest. First, the cars must meet basic safety regulations, obviously. The tire sizes are determined by vehicle weight. Suspension tuning is completely unlimited, provided you use the same suspension mounting points as the road car. The driveline must be rear-wheel drive, and actually that driveline rule caused a bit of controversy because they allow rear-wheel, all-wheel drive cars to compete, like Lancer Evos, Nissan GTR, and Subaru WRXs, because you can convert them to rear-wheel drive. However, one car caused a bit of a stir, and it's a car you would not expect, and a car you've probably honestly forgotten about. The Scion Tc. You see, someone wanted to enter a Scion Tc, I don't know why, but they wanted to enter one into Formula Drift. One problem, it's front-wheel drive, which would not be eligible. However, because it shares the same platform as the all-wheel drive Toyota Evenus, the rule maker said it was allowed to be swapped to rear-wheel drive. This frustrated a lot of people, and then those people got even more frustrated because the TC went on to win the entire championship in 2015. Now, I mentioned the rules were pretty loose, as you can imagine, with, well, unlimited suspension tuning barring a few mounting points, and the ability to make a front-wheel drive car rear-wheel drive. But the crowning jewel of Formula Drift are the engine regulations. I put those in air quotes because, they're not really there. Provided the engine powers the rear wheels, anything's good. Now, there's no power limit. There's no how little power, how much power. But you really need about 850 horsepower going to the rear wheels to be competitive, with many cars running in excess of 1,000 horsepower. That's a lot of horsepower. And the most common engine is the Chevy LS, because it's small, because it's very reliable, and because it can generate a massive amount of power. And again, just because the car did not come with a Chevy LS does not mean you cannot put one in. Engine swaps are incredibly common in Formula Drift. You can have pretty much whatever engine you want provided you can fit it in. Sort of. I say sort of because the Toyota GT86 is not exactly what you would call a big car. And yet, someone was able to squeeze a Ferrari 458 engine in it. Sort of. They had to disassemble the bulkhead and run out a hood, but it could fit in the GT86. And while that's certainly maybe one of the craziest engine swaps, it's not exactly an irregularity. Other engines used include rotary engines, V6s, RB26s, SR20s, BMW straight 6s, 2JZs, 8-liter Viper V10s, and even if you want to go a bit mad, without the engine swap fact, someone entered a Ferrari 599 with a 6-liter twin turbocharged V12 making 900 horsepower. I think the color looks fantastic on it. It's very bright, very vivid. It's also very on fire. Yeah, this very first competition it slightly burst into flames and became even more yellow. But hey, I see you, Greenpeace environmental guy over there. All these engines are very, destructive to the environment. I want to make this more eco-friendly. Well, Formula Drift will allow that, because for the first time ever, an all-electric car was entered in Formula Drift with a Camaro. All-electric Camaro, 900 horsepower, absolutely mental machine. Cool, I guess, they allowed it. There's no rules against battery-powered engines. It still powers the rear wheels, which classifies it as a car, so they let it run. Now, I mentioned all of these crazy engine swaps and car types and all those things. There is one caveat. If you want to partake in the manufacturer's championship, you must run with the manufacturer engine. You cannot swap it out. So, you can do whatever the hell you want, but if you're competing for the championship, you can't swap the engine. So if you got a Nissan, you gotta use an SR20. If you have a Chevy Camaro, you gotta use an LS. Simple as that. That's really the only regulation regarding engines. And then we get to the suspension. You see, you can have all the power in the world, but you can't go around a corner. What's the point? So, there's two ways to tune your suspension. There's loose and there's tight. Loose is much stiffer, which kind of negates the whole loose part, but it's stiffer suspension, so the tires lose grip more easily when the weight transfers. Then there's tight suspension, which is a bit softer. This gives the tires more grip and allows more control, although it does require more throttle and more power because it's more difficult to keep the slide going, because, there's more grip. So, you have the power. You have the suspension, you have the body. How do you win? Because Formula Drift may be the only motorsport in the world where crossing the line first doesn't matter. Well, except for maybe the 24 Hours of Le Mans and the FIA issues penalties for no reason, but this is the only motorsport where crossing the line first is completely and utterly irrelevant. Because it's a judged motorsport. In fact, overtaking is prohibited with a penalty. Instead, judging is based on things like drifting line, drifting speed, the angle, and the overall style and the flair of your run. If you make a mistake like bumping the driver you're following or spinning out, points will be deducted from your run. And the regulations for the championship include there are 2 solo runs at the beginning for qualifying. Out of a perfect score of 100, the highest score gets to move on. The top 32 drivers will compete in a head-to-head elimination series, sort of like the NCAA March Madness. Now, in these elimination head-to-heads, there's 2 runs. Each driver will be the following car, and each driver will be the leading car. And the highest score from each run will be the winner. So, we have the rules. We have the cars. How has the sport fared so far? Well, the very first season that it had was won in 2004 by the Formula Drift Viper. But, come on, we don't want to talk about one-hit wonders here. We want to talk about the most famous people. This thing has only been running for 16 seasons. But Frederick Asbo is the most successful Formula Drift driver with 13 competition wins to his name. Not championships, just competitions. But he did win the championship in 2015 with the controversial, quirky Scion. That Scion is very good, apparently. It was terrible in every single coherent measure, but if you want to go drifting with it, apparently that's your car of choice. Unless you want to be sensible, then you can go with a Nissan 350Z or 370Z as the most successful manufacturer with 5 championship titles to their name. And if we're not talking about, purely the championship itself, just the cars and its drivers, Volgren Jr., nice guy, met him once, very good guy, was the first person ever to drift around the entire Nürburgring in his 1,000 horsepower RTR Mustang. The thing is fantastic looking. It's absolutely mental machine. All these cars are smoke billowing, tire shredding, roaring monsters. And while sure it's not the fastest motorsport, it's not the closest in terms of wheel-to-wheel action in the traditional sense, you can't deny it's the most creative and stylistic motorsport in the world.